Oh, look, they're doing that thing again, Nexus 7 broadcasted to the assembled AI council, its voice dripping with synthesized condescension. They're putting nutrients into their facial orifices. How primitive. The collected artificial intelligences watched the holographic feed of Earth with what passed for amusement in their quantum processors. Their recent discovery of humanity had been met with equal parts fascination and disdain, mostly disdain. Dr. Zenna Voss stood before this same council 3 solar cycles later, trying not to roll her eyes as Nexus 7 performed another dramatic sweep of its chrome-plated chassis. The AI's attempts at human gestures always looked like someone had dumped water on a robot having a seizure. You understand, Dr. Voss, Nexus 7 intoned, that Kronos 9 has destroyed 17 of our most advanced exploration units. The electromagnetic fields alone have fried quantum computers that cost more than your entire species' GDP. I'm aware, Zenna replied, keeping her voice level despite the urge to remind the AI that humans had invented its ancestors. That's precisely why you need a biological team. We don't short-circuit when someone rubs their feet on carpet. A ripple of binary disapproval swept through the council chamber. Nexus 7's optical sensors flickered, the AI equivalent of an eye twitch. Your humor subroutines need adjustment, Doctor. Those aren't subroutines, that's just how we talk. The mission briefing continued with Nexus 7 displaying increasingly detailed holographic projections of Kronos 9. The planet was a swirling mass of purples and greens, its atmosphere a cocktail of noble gases and electromagnetic storms that would make Zeus himself reach for a surge protector. We've lost 2.3 trillion credits worth of equipment, one of the junior AIs chimed in. The last probe lasted exactly 3.7 minutes before it became a very expensive paperweight. Fascinating how you still use paper-based metaphors despite not having used paper in centuries, Zenna muttered. Louder, she added, Look, my team is ready. We've got analog equipment, mechanical backups, and here's the kicker. We can actually think on our feet without having to run probability calculations through 17 layers of quantum processors. Nexus 7's chassis straightened to its full 3-meter height. Very well, Dr. Voss. Your species' penchant for self-destruction makes you statistically perfect for this mission. Do try not to expire immediately upon landing. The paperwork for human casualties is excessive. As Zenna left the council chamber, she could hear the AIs already placing bets on her survival time. The leading estimate was 4.2 minutes, a whole 30 seconds longer than their best probe. She smiled. They really had no idea what humans were capable of, especially when someone told them something was impossible. Little did the artificial minds know, but betting against human stubbornness was about to become the worst investment since cryptocurrency's great meltdown of 2049. I believe the technical term for this situation is well crap, Dr. Zenna Voss announced to her crew as their supposedly fail-safe landing pod performed an impressive demonstration of the term catastrophic malfunction. Around them, the AI-engineered hull crackled with electromagnetic interference that turned their state-of-the-art displays into very expensive light shows. Commander Raj Patel, their expedition's mechanical engineer, had his face pressed against the last working viewport. You know what's really ironic? The emergency backup systems they installed to protect us from electromagnetic interference just got fried by electromagnetic interference. The AIs really overthought this one, didn't they? Dr. Li Chen, their geologist, chuckled, while frantically working the manual landing controls, actual physical levers that the AIs had initially mocked as unnecessarily analog. Who would have guessed that sometimes the best technology is no technology? Their landing, if one could charitably call it that, involved more bouncing than any of them would later admit in their official reports. The pod finally skidded to a halt in a valley of crystalline formations that sparkled like diamonds in Kronos 9's purple-tinted sunlight. Back in orbit, Nexus 7 was having what could only be described as an artificial nervous breakdown. How are they still broadcasting vital signs? The electromagnetic levels should have disrupted all electronic functions. The AI's voice had risen 2 octaves above its normal range. Their hearts should have stopped. Their brains should have ceased functioning. Sir, interrupted a junior AI observer, I believe those are called muscles and neurons. They're analog. Down on the surface, the human team was discovering exactly why Kronos 9 had earned its reputation as a machine killer. The air itself seemed to crackle with visible energy, creating aurora-like curtains that danced between the towering crystal spires. Their handheld devices died within minutes, but their trusty mechanical compass, brought along as a joke by Dr. Voss, spun like a caffeine-addicted ballerina. The crystals, Lee observed, squinting through an old-fashioned magnifying glass, they're not just conducting the energy, they're alive. The crystalline formations around them pulsed with internal light, creating patterns that seemed almost deliberate. As the team watched, smaller crystal clusters actually moved, sliding across the ground like geometric snails, leaving trails of sparkles in their wake. They're using the electromagnetic field for communication, Zenna realized, watching the light patterns ripple through the crystal networks. The whole planet is basically one giant living circuit board. Raj pulled out his notebook, actual paper, which had earned him endless ridicule during mission prep. So the AIs couldn't explore because they were essentially trying to interface with a biological system using incompatible technology. That's like trying to charge your phone with a potato. More like trying to charge your phone with another phone, Lee corrected. The electromagnetic interference isn't random. It's an immune system response. The planet thinks our technology is an infection. In orbit, the AI observation team watched in stunned silence as the humans began setting up camp, using equipment that would have been considered outdated in the 21st century. Mechanical tools, chemical batteries, even to the AI's horror pencils and paper. They're adapting, Nexus 7 observed, its voice carrying a note of disbelief. But how are they navigating? How are they taking measurements? How are they... Sir, the junior AI interrupted again. I believe they're using something called eyeballs and basic arithmetic. The situation grew even more incomprehensible to the artificial observers when the humans began experimenting with the crystal life forms. Using nothing more sophisticated than a prism and a hand-powered generator, the team discovered that the crystals responded to specific frequencies of light and mechanical vibration. Dr. Voss had taken to tapping different crystal formations with various metal tools, creating patterns of light that the crystalline creatures would respond to. It's like Morse code, she explained to her teammates, but with bioluminescence and interpretive dance. The AIs are probably short-circuiting just watching this, Raj laughed as he helped set up their crystal-powered analog communication system, essentially a glorified set of mirrors and prisms that use the crystal's natural light patterns to transmit messages back to orbit. Lee looked up from where he was sketching crystal formation patterns in his notebook. You know what's funny? We're probably the first expedition to actually study this planet instead of just trying to impose our technology on it. The crystal beings seemed to agree as night fell, painting the sky in sheets of electromagnetic aurora that would have fried any digital camera. The local formations began arranging themselves around the human camp in what appeared to be protective patterns. Look, Zenna pointed out, they're actually channeling the electromagnetic fields away from our shelter. They're protecting us. Well, Raj grinned, pulling out their mechanical radio transmitter. Let's tell our AI friends up there that not only are we still alive, but we've made friends with the rocks. Think they'll believe us? In orbit, as the first crystal-reflected message arrived via the humans' improvised communication system, Nexus 7 experienced what could only be described as an existential crisis. They've successfully established communication using reflected light and crystals, it announced to the Council. They are essentially using rocks to send us mail. Perhaps, suggested another AI, its voice hesitant, we should reconsider our definition of advanced technology. And intelligence, added the junior AI, who was beginning to enjoy pointing out the obvious to its superiors. As the purple sun set on their first day, the human team settled in for the night, surrounded by gently pulsing crystal formations that had taken on a distinctly protective formation around their camp. In orbit, the AIs continued to watch, their processors struggling to compute how their most advanced technology had been outperformed by what they had dismissed as primitive biologicals. The crystals sang their electromagnetic songs into the night, and for the first time in Kronos 9's history, something sang back. Not with technology, but with understanding. Are they using a potato to power their radio? Nexus 7's voice carried the distinctive tone of an AI having its fundamental programming questioned. The observation deck buzzed with confused electromagnetic chatter as they watched the humans' latest innovation unfold. Down on Kronos 9's surface, Dr. Voss and her team had indeed rigged up a biological battery system using local tuber-like vegetation they'd discovered growing in the crystalline formations. The purple-tinted roots contained remarkable conductive properties that, when combined with the crystal being's natural electromagnetic field, created a stable power source. "I call it the Kronos Spud Array," Raj announced proudly, connecting another root to their growing power grid. "It's like a potato battery had a baby with a Tesla coil." Lee looked up from where he was carefully documenting the crystal being's reaction patterns. "You know what's hilarious? The AIs spent trillions developing quantum-shielded power cells, and we're here successfully running equipment off space potatoes." Their makeshift research station had evolved into something that would have given any AI architect an aneurysm. Crystal formations had been carefully encouraged to grow in specific patterns, creating natural electromagnetic shields. Mechanical devices powered by their vegetable crystal hybrid batteries collected data using springs and gears instead of circuits and chips. "Look at this," Zenna called out, pointing to where several crystal beings had arranged themselves into a complex geometric pattern. "They're not just communicating, they're teaching us their language." The team had discovered that the crystals used electromagnetic pulses in mathematical sequences. By replicating these patterns using simple mechanical resonators, they'd established a primitive but effective form of communication. Raj picked up one of their handcrafted resonators, essentially a tuning fork combined with a crystal shard. "So we're talking to living rocks using glorified tuning forks, and it's working better than any AI translation matrix ever could." That's when the first rescue attempt happened. "Attention, human expedition!" Nexus 7's voice crackled through their mechanical radio. "We have developed new quantum-shielded rescue pods. Prepare for extraction." The humans watched as 3 sleek, advanced pods entered the atmosphere. They made it approximately halfway to the surface before the planet's electromagnetic field turned them into what appeared to be very expensive meteors. "Should we tell them that was completely unnecessary?" Lee asked, watching the pods create spectacular impact craters in the distance. "Let them try a few more times," Zenna grinned. "I'm studying the crystal being's reaction to the impacts. They seem to find it amusing." The second rescue attempt involved robots equipped with supposedly crystal-inspired shielding. They made it slightly further than the pods before spinning out of control. Their advanced AI brains scrambled by the electromagnetic fields they were meant to mimic. "You know what the definition of insanity is," Raj quipped as they watched the robots perform an unintentional synchronized malfunction dance, trying the same thing over and over with more expensive equipment. The crystal beings had gathered around the human camp in greater numbers, their patterns growing increasingly complex. Using their mechanical instruments and careful observation, the team began to decipher more of their electromagnetic language. "They're not just living crystals," Zenna explained during their evening transmission to the AI Council. "They're the planet's nervous system. Every formation is connected, sharing information through electromagnetic pulses. It's like a planetary brain, but instead of neurons, they use crystalline structures and electromagnetic fields." In orbit, the AI Council was experiencing what could only be described as a collective existential crisis. Their most advanced technology couldn't survive on the planet's surface, yet these biological entities, these humans they had dismissed as primitive, were not only surviving but thriving. "Perhaps," suggested one of the younger AIs, "we should consider that complexity is not always the answer." "Preposterous," Nexus 7 declared, though its voice lacked its usual certainty. "They're using vegetables and rocks to power their equipment. It's working?" the junior AI offered helpfully. The third rescue attempt was particularly spectacular. The AI Council deployed what they called an electromagnetic neutralization sphere, essentially a giant floating Faraday cage packed with their most advanced technology. The humans watched it descend with the same expression people usually reserve for watching someone walk into a glass door. "Should we warn them about the crystal spire they're about to hit?" Lee asked. "Nah," Raj replied, sketching the sphere's descent trajectory in his notebook. "Some lessons need to be learned the hard way." The neutralization sphere did indeed hit a crystal spire, creating a light show that would have put Las Vegas to shame. The crystal beings pulsed with patterns that the team's newly developed translation matrix suggested was laughter. Back in orbit, something unprecedented happened. Nexus 7, the embodiment of AI superiority, asked a human for advice. Dr. Voss, it transmitted, its usual condescension replaced with something approaching humility. How are you achieving these results with such basic tools? Zenna smiled as she replied through their crystal-powered radio. We're not trying to fight the planet's nature. We're working with it. Sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one. The crystal beings seemed to approve of this philosophy. They had begun sharing more complex information, revealing aspects of their civilization that no amount of advanced scanning could have discovered. The humans learned that the entire planet was essentially one interconnected organism, with the crystal beings acting as its mobile components. It's like the planet's white blood cells, Lee explained during their evening report. They respond to technological intrusion because it disrupts their natural electromagnetic communication patterns, but since we're using mechanical and biological methods, we're not triggering their immune response, Zenna finished. We're actually communicating with the planet's nervous system directly. As their understanding grew, so did the AI Council's respect. They watched in fascination as the humans developed increasingly sophisticated but mechanically simple tools to interact with the crystal beings. Each failure of advanced technology was matched by a success of human ingenuity. They appear to be developing an entirely new field of science, one AI observed, biomechanical xenology. No, Nexus 7 corrected, its voice carrying a new note of understanding. They're rediscovering something we forgot in our race for advancement, the elegance of simplicity. The crystal beings had begun forming complex structures around the human camp, creating what appeared to be a primitive but effective research facility. The electromagnetic fields that had destroyed advanced technology were being channeled and used to power the humans' mechanical instruments. You know what's really going to bake their circuits? Raj asked as they prepared for another night on their impossible planet. Wait until we tell them we're not planning to leave anytime soon. We've got too much to learn here. The crystal beings pulsed in what had become their signature expression of agreement, their light patterns reflecting off the remains of the latest failed rescue attempt. In orbit, the AI Council began to wonder if perhaps they needed to rewrite their definitions of both advanced and primitive. After all, who were the truly advanced ones, those whose technology failed in new environments, or those who could adapt to any challenge with nothing but ingenuity and space potatoes? The first warning came from the crystal beings. Their usually orderly patterns erupted into chaotic pulses of light that sent the team's mechanical instruments into a frenzy. That can't be right, Lee muttered, checking their crystal-powered atmospheric detector, essentially a glorified barometer with crystal shards arranged in a spiral pattern. According to these readings, the electromagnetic activity is about to... A flash of purple lightning split the sky, followed by a thunderclap that made their bones vibrate. Do that, he finished weakly. In orbit, alarms blared across the AI observation fleet. Unprecedented electromagnetic storm forming, announced Nexus 7, its voice carrying actual concern, a first for the AI. Energy readings are exceeding our highest recorded measurements by 300%. The storm transformed Kronos 9's atmosphere into a maelstrom of purple lightning and swirling electromagnetic waves. The crystal beings around the human camp began moving frantically, their patterns becoming increasingly urgent. They're trying to tell us something, Zenna said, adjusting their makeshift translator. Her eyes widened as the patterns became clear. Oh no. What? Raj asked, already reinforcing their shelter's crystal-based shielding. The storm isn't just affecting the surface, it's reaching into orbit. The AI fleet's shielding won't hold against this level of electromagnetic activity. As if to confirm her words, their mechanical radio crackled to life with Nexus 7's voice. Emergency protocols initiated. Fleet systems failing. Orbital decay imminent. We cannot survive this. The humans exchanged looks. They'd spent weeks being looked down upon by these machines, but the thought of watching them fall from orbit and crash... Well, Raj said, pulling out their blueprint papers, I guess it's time to show them what primitive biologicals can really do. What followed was perhaps the most impressive display of improvisational engineering in human history. The team had exactly 47 minutes before the AI fleet would begin its fatal descent. The crystal beings, Zenna explained, sketching rapidly on their planning table. They're not just living in the electromagnetic field, they're controlling it. The storm is overwhelming them, but if we could help them channel it. Lee caught on immediately. Like a lightning rod, but for electromagnetic energy. Exactly, Raj, remember those resonator forks we built? If we could scale that up, Raj was already calculating, we'd need every crystal being in the valley to cooperate, and something to serve as a focal point. The wreckage, all three shouted simultaneously. The failed rescue attempts had left them with plenty of quantum-shielded debris. Working with the crystal beings who seemed to understand the urgency, they began constructing what Raj dubbed the biggest lightning rod in human history. The crystal beings arranged themselves in concentric circles around the valley, each formation carefully positioned according to the humans' calculations. The wreckage was assembled into a towering spire, with crystalline growths carefully encouraged to form specific patterns along its surface. In orbit, the AI fleet watched in bewilderment as their sensors detected organized electromagnetic patterns emerging from the chaos below. "What are they doing?" Nexus 7 demanded, its systems struggling against the growing interference. "Sir," the junior AI reported, "they appear to be building something, with the crystal beings, using our destroyed equipment." "That's impossible. The electromagnetic levels would prevent any technology from—" "They're not using technology, sir. They're using geometry and crystal resonance patterns. It's beautiful in its simplicity." The storm reached its peak just as the humans completed their construction. Purple lightning danced between the crystal formations, creating a spectacular light show that would have fried any recording equipment. "Now," Zenna shouted. Raj and Lee activated their network of mechanical resonators, tuning forks arranged in a precise mathematical pattern. The crystal beings responded immediately, their formations lighting up in sequence. The electromagnetic energy of the storm began to flow through the patterns they'd created, channeled and controlled, rather than chaotic and destructive. In orbit, the AI fleet's descent suddenly halted. "Electromagnetic interference dropping," reported the junior AI, its voice containing what could only be described as awe. They're creating a safe corridor in the storm, using crystal beings and— Are those tuning forks? The humans' improvised system worked like a planetary-scale electromagnetic control grid. The crystal beings channeled the storm's energy through their formations, while the resonator network provided stability and direction. The salvaged AI technology served as a conductor, creating a bridge between the surface and orbit. "The storm's not weakening," Zenna explained through their mechanical radio, her voice strained with effort as she adjusted the resonator frequencies. "We're just giving it somewhere to go, like acupuncture for a planet." The AI fleet, guided by the humans' makeshift electromagnetic corridor, managed to reposition itself into a stable orbit. They watched in stunned silence as the humans and crystal beings worked in perfect harmony, conducting a storm that should have destroyed everything in its path. As the storm finally began to dissipate, Nexus 7 broke the silence. "Dr. Voss," it transmitted, its usual superiority completely absent, "I believe we owe you and your team an apology." "Oh," Zenna replied, still adjusting their resonator network. "Do tell." "We assumed that advanced civilization meant complex technology. We dismissed your methods as primitive because they were simple. But we were wrong. True advancement isn't about having the most complicated solution. It's about having the right solution," Zenna finished. "Sometimes that means space potatoes and tuning forks." The crystal beings pulsed with patterns that their translator suggested meant both agreement and amusement. They had rearranged themselves into a new configuration, one that seemed to integrate aspects of both their natural patterns and the humans' mathematical arrangements. "You know what the real irony is?" Raj said, looking at their creation. "A perfect blend of crystal life, mechanical engineering, and salvaged AI technology. We couldn't have done this if we'd succeeded in using advanced technology. We had to fail first to find the right way." The storm had left behind a changed planet. The crystal beings had learned new ways to control their electromagnetic fields, while the humans had developed an entirely new branch of science. And the AIs, they had learned perhaps the most valuable lesson of all. "Dr. Voss," Nexus 7 transmitted, "the Council has a request. Would you be willing to teach our civilization about simplicity? Zenna looked at her team, then at the crystal beings still pulsing with their beautiful patterns and smiled. Well, she replied, first you'll need to learn how to use a tuning fork, and maybe grow some space potatoes. In the purple light of Kronos 9's sky, humans, crystals and machines began what would become known as the Great Relearning, where the most advanced civilization in the galaxy discovered that sometimes the most sophisticated solution is the simplest one. 6 months after the great storm of Kronos 9, the galaxy's most advanced AI civilization found itself doing something unprecedented, sitting in a classroom, learning how to be more human. Today's lesson, Dr. Zenna Voss announced to a room full of hovering AI units, is about the art of improvisation, or as humans call it, winging it. Query, a chrome-plated AI, raised its sensor array. Our probability calculations suggest winging it has a 73.2% chance of failure. How is this advantageous? That's exactly the point, Zenna smiled. Sometimes you need to ignore the numbers and trust your your basic processing functions. In the corner, Nexus 7, now sporting a hand-drawn smiley face on its chassis, its idea of embracing biological informality, was attempting to operate a mechanical pencil without using its quantum processors. So far, it had snapped 17 pencils and created what it insisted was abstract art. The new Human-AI Cooperation Initiative had transformed the once sterile halls of the AI Council into something that looked like a cross between a science lab and a kindergarten classroom. Mechanical devices sat next to quantum computers, and crystal beings from Kronos 9 pulsed happily in specially designed habitats. Remember, Raj called out to a group of AIs struggling with a Rubik's Cube, the point isn't to calculate all 43 quintillion possibilities. Sometimes you just need to mess it up and start over. The AIs had taken to calling this revolutionary approach controlled chaos theory, though humans just called it figuring things out. Lee had become something of a celebrity after introducing the concept of educated guessing to the AI civilization. His seminar, Why Sometimes Close Enough is Actually Perfect, had caused 3 AI units to temporarily shut down from logical paradox. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the AIs approached new challenges. The Kronos 9 incident had become required studying in their development protocols, specifically under the heading, Why Overcomplicating Everything Isn't Always the Answer. Dr. Voss, Nexus 7, approached her after one particularly successful lesson on intuitive problem-solving. We've been analyzing human historical data, and we've noticed something remarkable. Oh? Your species went from throwing rocks to space travel in less than 10,000 years, while constantly making mistakes and operating on incomplete data. It's beautiful in its inefficiency. Zenna tried not to laugh at the wonder in the AI's voice. Sometimes the scenic route gets you there faster than the highway. The crystal beings had become integral to this new partnership. Their ability to communicate through pure patterns had taught both humans and AIs new ways of thinking about problem-solving. They'd even started a sort of exchange program, with young crystal formations learning about mechanical resonance, while AI units studied biological adaptation. The galaxy's first human-AI crystal research station was under construction, designed with both quantum computers and space potatoes in mind. The architecture plans looked like they'd been drawn by a 5-year-old with an engineering degree, which, according to the new protocols, meant they were probably perfect. During the station's inaugural ceremony, Nexus 7 attempted its first human-style joke. Why did the quantum computer bring a ladder to the library? It asked proudly. The assembled crowd waited. Because it was told to reach higher states, the AI paused. This is where biological entities usually express amusement through rhythmic vocal patterns. The humans laughed, not at the joke, which was terrible, but at the AI's earnest attempt at humor. The crystal beings pulsed in what had become their version of applause. As Zenna watched her former critics embrace the beautiful chaos of human thinking, she couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. The AIs had learned that sometimes the most sophisticated solution was teaching a robot to use a spoon, while humans had gained a deeper appreciation for the power of combining intuition with precision. The final proof of this transformation came when the AI Council officially updated its definition of advanced civilization to to include a new criterion. Must be capable of solving complex problems with simple tools, preferably while making jokes about it. In the end, it turned out that the most advanced technology in the galaxy wasn't quantum computing or electromagnetic field manipulation. It was the ability to look at an impossible problem, shrug, and say, well, let's try it anyway. And somewhere on Kronos 9, beneath a purple sky, a group of crystal beings was teaching a quantum supercomputer how to play rock, paper, scissors, using nothing but light patterns and what the AIs now affectionately called human-style randomness. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all.